We're actually here to talk about Superman Legacy, the most important movie in DC Films history, supposed to come out in July of 2025, only 2.5 years, which makes sense why they are rushing this damn thing. We actually got a tweet from James Gunn. At least the initial draft is complete, and it sounds like that is not all they're up to. After only giving incremental updates on his script for Superman Legacy, co-CEO of DC Studios, James Gunn, made an official production announcement regarding the reboot of The Man of Steel. I'm honored to be part of the legacy, and what better day than Superman Anniversary Day to dive fully into early pre-production on Superman Legacy, costumes, production design, and more now up and running. My oh my, that is absolutely working at breakneck speed, although James Gunn has stated in the past that he had been working on the Superman script before he was hired to be the new co-CEO of DC Studios, the newly formed DC Studios. It used to be DC Films, which were a part of Warner Brothers Studio proper back in the day, but now they are their own fully independent autonomous entity working under David Zaslav. Actually, some people reached out to him and asked him, did you get any feedback from Warner Brothers regarding at least your initial draft for Superman Legacy? And he said, absolutely not. We are our own company, and I don't answer to anybody, which I don't know is going to work in the long run. But we have certainly seen in the past a lot of productions that end up being destroyed by meddling from the corporate entities within there. It doesn't sound like that is going to be happening with Superman Legacy. He was also asked if that's a full script, which kind of seems like ridiculous. But he did confirm that, in fact, he is fully done, at least with the first draft of Superman Legacy. It is here, and now they are at least in the initial stages of designing costumes and all that kind of stuff. I imagine what comes next is you start casting whoever is going to be the new Superman. There have been a lot of leaks coming out stating that they've already found the new Superman. I think that Lerman kid was rumored to be the new Superman. He's shot that down. It doesn't sound like casting has happened, but they are well underway in the pre-production process, and this thing is absolutely being fast-tracked. I do think this could be a bad strategy. Obviously, this is the most important movie James Gunn probably will ever make in his life. And you could say, well, maybe it's Guardians of the Galaxy because that was MCU introducing new characters and stuff like this. But he's never actually been the co-CEO of his own company. And then the big movie that everything is riding on is the movie that he's producing. So this is probably the most important project that he's ever done in his entire life. There's a lot of pressure on James Gunn to get this right, to nail this version of Superman, nail the casting, and absolutely kick off the new DCU in style as we kind of wrap up the last remnants of the DCEU. Some may question, well, why are they moving so fast in the first place? Wouldn't you want to get everything right? I believe James Gunn has heard the rumors behind the scenes that we've all been hearing for about a year now that David Zaslav of Warner Brothers Discovery are looking to sell off Warner Brothers, at least all those assets, basically as soon as possible once they get the company back in shape. And I believe James Gunn knows this movie needs to be far along enough into production to basically guarantee that it'll actually get made, because if he waits 3 or 4 years, it could actually be sold off, and then they hire somebody else to take over, and then their vision of whatever the DCU ends up coming out. I believe that James Gunn is trying to ensure that he at least gets a crack at his 10-year plan, which is obviously going to be kicking off with Superman Legacy. Despite DC Studios' Creature Commandos animated series being the first entry into James Gunn's new DCU, Superman Legacy will be the true debut of the new status quo of the universe, which means it is by far the most important movie in the up-and-coming DC universe. Nothing much is known about the reboot, aside from a handful of comments from Gunn about his intentions with the film and a plot synopsis. For instance, this Superman won't be a redo of any other Superman adaptation, as it's a chance to see this character in a new light. I will give James Gunn this. He has certainly been giving out tidbits of information here and there, basically since the project was announced and he took over as the co-CEO of DCU. He is absolutely being interactive with the fans, reaching out to them, listening to them. Do I think he's just going to listen to everything everyone says because everybody wants the Snyderverse? At least that's what they're trying to tell James Gunn. No, I do not, but at least he's accessible. It feels like he might be a man of the people, one of the few Hollywood bigwig producers that actually seems to care about what the people think. We know that he has read comic books in the past, and this is a big project for him. I am a little wary of some of the details on how they want to make this Superman truly feel different. Me personally, I think you get to the heart of it and show that Clark Kent is the actual hero, and Superman is the power set associated with the hero when he decides to go out there and save people, and really focus in and really show that Clark Kent is the bright shining light within the DC universe. I don't believe he's going to do that. I think he's going to focus on his Kryptonian heritage. We also do know there are rumors that they are going to incorporate some elements of the DCEU into the newly formed DCU. One of those being apparently Blue Beetle. We'll see if that movie absolutely bombs. Maybe they'll just pass up on that one. But it does sound like James Gunn is picking and choosing a few opportunities to incorporate stuff like that. There was some really interesting stuff. And obviously, I don't believe there's been any actual conversations between James Gunn and the Russo brothers about coming on board. But the Russo brothers were asked about this. They are currently not really working on any Marvel projects with the MCU. I mean, they've done some really cool stuff. They did Captain America, The Winter Soldier. They did Captain America Civil War. They did the Avengers movies, Infinity War, as well as Endgame. And they've had an enormous amount of success. For some reason, they're not really associated with the MCU anymore. And comicbook.com asked the Russo brothers if they would direct a film for James Gunn and Peter Safran's DCU reboot. There was no hesitation in their response. James Russo stated, obviously, James over there running it, it would be a no-brainer. We love him to death. We love the direction he's going to take that world in. You know he's going to be inventive with it. We also know James Gunn served as an executive producer on the Russo brothers' Avengers, Infinity War, and Endgame films, both of which heavily featured Gunn's Guardians of the Galaxy, obviously, which are doing their last hurrah within the MCU. So there's more than just a happenstance relationship between the three. They've worked in the same universe. They've been ultra successful, but he also did produce some of their films in the past, specifically two of the highest grossing films of all times, one of them being the highest grossing film of all times. I believe that would be Endgame. The Russo brothers coming over to the DCU would be the biggest coup de grace in the history of entertainment. That would be an enormous get. The Russo brothers know how to get to the heart of the character, but they also know how to build spectacle. And when I say spectacle, I mean a big, wide-arching film that really feels like it has stakes. They don't lose all the important stuff as they try to blow it up bigger and bigger. The Winter Soldier is a really cool like spy espionage film, and it has smaller stakes within it than anything they direct after that, because then they go to Captain America Civil War, which is basically a mini Avengers movie, which also includes the debut of Spider-Man in the MCU. It doesn't get much bigger than that, but then it did get bigger than that because they were able to do Avengers Infinity War, which has a pretty decent story, although in my opinion, I consider Thanos to be the protagonist of the story. I don't personally agree with that creative choice that the Russo brothers made there. And then when we do get to Endgame, that movie is more spectacle than anything. We get a few fan servicey moments with obviously Tony Stark speaking to his father, Thor going back and talking to his mother before she dies. We see the death of Tony Stark eventually, but that movie pretty much is spectacle. But they were able to pull that one off too. But that was also the payoff to like 20 movies worth of experience to where that was the book and the end of it all. But before Endgame, they were absolutely able to have enormous stakes within the universe without losing the essence of the characters. And that's something that James Gunn himself has identified as a reason that superhero fatigue is setting in. I think you have to do whatever you can do to bring the Russo brothers on board. I thought, hey, a Ben Affleck directed Batman film would be a really cool thing for James Gunn to do with the DCU. A Russo Brothers Titans movie or a Russo Brothers Justice League movie or even a Russo Brothers Batman movie or something like that would be absolutely enormous. And it sounds like that's one of the characters that they're interested in because they were asked specifically which characters they wanted to direct. This is what Joe Russo stated. And favorite DC characters? I mean, man, there's so many good ones. I always answered based on the comics I collected as a kid. And the two comics I collected most were Spider-Man. Actually, the three were Spider-Man, X-Men, and Batman. But there have been a lot of iterations of Batman, so I feel like that's an obvious answer. His brother, Anthony Russo, stated, here's how you know we haven't actually gotten literal about it and specific about it because, yeah, Batman would be my favorite character for my entire childhood, but obviously it's been well explored. Basically confirming that both brothers would be very interested in a Batman movie, but also confirming they actually haven't talked to James Gunn yet about it. But if the word is out there, and I imagine they did this in public for a reason, James Gunn has their number. He should get in contact with them and he should put them in charge of one of the big DC projects. One of the really important ones they know can't fail. That needs to have a lot of heart, a lot of character work, but also have some of those amazing spectacle moments to really put the thing over the top and be one of the more successful movies in the entire history of the DCU, which has certainly had some very, very big time highs. You think about Wonder Woman, Aquaman, Even the Justice League movie, as bad as it was, actually made some money before everything fell apart when people realized just how crappy the quality of the movie was. And it basically just died almost on impact. That was supposed to be an Avengers level film and didn't even get close to that. But there are also a lot of lows. Just as far as the death of the DCEU itself, obviously everything happened with Zack Snyder and his family, him stepping away, Joss Whedon coming in, and then everything falling apart, Walter Hamada coming in, trying to fix everything. None of that ever actually worked. Bring some stability to the DCU. Bring in the best talent you can find, because Kevin Feige sure as hell ain't doing that right now. He is going out of his way to find people that aren't actually talented. The Russo brothers are there for the taking, and they're very interested in working in the DCU. So a lot of cool stuff going on right now. Superman is being fast-tracked. We shall see what happens with that. We have very limited information about the Superman film, but the information that we do have, I am very skeptical about a couple of key points that he made about this. If you haven't seen this and my opinions on this, definitely check this video out right now. There's also a link in the video description.